What's up, guys? If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Also, please smash that like button on the video and enjoy the show.
What you might think is worse than someone else could push you towards believing someone else is more evil than someone else, right? And it's not necessarily a competition, but we do like to know. You know, it's something we talk about a lot. You see it all the time on, I think I was at the hotel the other night and I was scrolling through the TV. I haven't done that in a long time, through the guide, and it was like, one of the programs was the most evil gangsters in America, you know? And I'm sure a lot of people watch that because they want to know who is the most evil, you know? Right. What's the worst of the worst?
Worst, most, yeah, exactly.
Right.
You're onto something here.
Right. And so you could look at so many different things. You look at how many people they killed. How many people were they, not even personally, how many people were they responsible for killing, you know? What were they like when they were with people? What was their impact on future generations and other people? Like, for example, you could say Hitler birthed neo-Nazis, you know, like he's responsible for neo-Nazis. Sure. So you can look at influence, you can look at numbers, policies, whatever you want to do. But for me personally, when you're trying to define the most evil person, I look at that person, you know, and it is what they've done because, for example, maybe Ted Bundy was a worse person than Stalin, you know, but he had nowhere near the impact that Stalin.
The scope and scale.
Yeah. So he doesn't enter into the conversation personally because you do have to factor in the scope when you're talking about the most evil people, which has traditionally been, you know, despots and dictators. You're probably not going to find more evil people than the people who are responsible for genocides. You know, that is the worst thing. So one thing I stick to is murder is the most evil thing you can do because you're taking away everything that person is and will ever be, you know? Even like torture isn't even close to being murder because there's like an example would be John McCain, who was a POW in Vietnam, but went on to lead a successful life with a loving family. And he died in old age, you know? If you ask John McCain if he would have rather died in that cage in Vietnam, he would say no. You know, I lived a great life after that.
Right.
Now, being tortured to death is one of the worst ways you can be murdered, but murder is the worst thing you can do.
Correct.
Because you give no option for anyone to heal from murder. You can't heal from murder. You can heal from everything else, but not murder, you know? And so by that logic, genocide is the worst thing, a step above murder because it's mass murder, you know? So mass murderers are typically the most evil people who have ever existed. And Stalin was a mass murderer, but he wasn't just a mass murderer who said, here's the people I want you to kill. Here's like, we need to kill like this specific group, or here's a number that I need you guys to achieve for this economic thing or whatever. He was down there in the details. He was like, no, I want you to kill this guy. And by the way, when he dies, can you tell me if he screams in a cute way?
So you think, because we talked about this a little bit, but it seems like you are basing it strictly on the detailed fun he had with it versus Hitler, who was signing off on plans that were a creation of his ideology.
Right. Hitler was an architect who made the plans, and he was like, here, go build it. Stalin was an architect who was like, I'm writing all the numbers in. Like, I'm going down to the very, very little details. Why? Why am I doing that? Not because it's more efficient, because I like it. And that was his reasoning. You know, he liked doing what he was doing. He sat in hours in his dacha every day, writing lists of names of people to be killed because he enjoyed doing it. And that is horrifying.
Yeah.
You know?
And you said people aren't born evil in your opinion.
Right.
But do you think genetically there's a predisposition to having a lower threshold to evil, i.e. the spawn of Stalin could go the wrong way a little easier than you or me?
I mean, possibly. So even they could, but I don't think they have any. They're not more likely to become an evil person because they were born, their parents were evil or something. But there are certain things in your genetics that cause you to react to different things in different ways to other people. Like we were talking about earlier, how two kids in one house, one can become a serial killer and one can become a charity worker. And that has to do with how they perceive the world and how they perceive what has happened to them, you know? And it's how they absorb the negative stimulus around them that makes them into who they are. Some people absorb it and they're able to, that's not me, I'm brushing it off. I'm going to be, I don't remember his name, but there's one of the best examples is this guy who grew up in a very impoverished environment, but then he went on to become like an astronaut and a doctor and like all these different things. Like he surmounted the odds that was presented to him. He didn't let what happened to him define him. And it's not necessarily someone's fault that they let it define them. It's just who they are and how they reacted to what the things were around them. And that unfortunately defined who they are, you know? So yes, genetics play into it, in that how you react to certain things will be determined by who you are.
Yeah.
But if you don't have those things to react to, then you're not going to turn out that way.
Well, that's good for us, man, because Stalin's granddaughter lives in the U.S.
Yeah.
I think she's in you ever seen her?
Yeah.
Can you Google her real fast, Alessia? If people haven't seen Stalin's granddaughter, I don't think he would approve.
Yeah.
Right?
No, he wouldn't. But she actually grew up with Stalin, though. She was in his house, and he was
the
there.
Daughter or the granddaughter?
The daughter. Oh, her granddaughter.
The granddaughter didn't.
Oh, the granddaughter
never
didn't.
met
Right. But
Can we get this big on the screen, Alessia? That's her. That's her. Yeah. Let's blow her picture up.
and if I remember right, it was his daughter was Svetlana Ayula. I don't know how to say her name properly.
I'm impressed you know that. But yeah, something like
Svetlana.
That.
She moved to Oregon, Portland. Yeah, she moved to Portland later in life.
She's like, yep, that explains it.
And I don't know if Stalin would have approved of his granddaughter, but his daughter grew up with him. You know, she was around, but she wasn't aware of a lot of the stuff that was going. But she could have been, and if she was, maybe she would have turned out a little bit like Stalin. But she saw Stalin as daddy. You know, my good old father bounced me on his knee.
That's the thing, especially if you're young and innocent, like you were saying earlier.
Right.
I mean, you remember like Saddam's daughter was freaking out when he got arrested. I'm sure Saddam was great to her.
Yeah.
Right? But Saddam was murdering millions of people while he was at that too.
Right.
And coming home and saying, Daddy's home.
Yeah.
Hard day at work today.
Exactly. And then Stalin in his house, there was bad stuff going on around him, but he also got beat by his alcoholic father as a kid. Horribly. And was ignored by him and neglected. Yeah. You know, it's...
Well, the other thing here, though, is even these people who are in charge, they rule on fear, right? But they're still one person, which means that in groups below them, they are validated.
Yes.
So again, let's stay with Stalin and Hitler. Let's start with Stalin. He was in power till, he fucking croaked.
Right.
And no one ever, he was killing doctors and stuff, and no one ever went, nudged the other guy next to him and said, let's get rid of this motherfucker.
I forget who said it, but I heard someone say once that you need, in order for these people to operate like this, they need a license from everyone else to do it, So as horrific as Stalin was, he couldn't have done what he did without help. And he is, out of all of them, he's most responsible for, ordering them to do what they did. But then you go back to who's responsible for Stalin, Lenin, and the people who supported Lenin, and the people who killed for Lenin, and the people who killed for Stalin, and so on and so forth. You can't just blame it all on the leader. You can point to them as a source, one of the sources of horrible things that a bunch of other people did as well, So no, there is no Stalin without the people who helped him do what he did.
And then the thing with Hitler is I study that history closely. I usually do it like once a year. I'll go on like a week-long binge of a different aspect of it each time. But I think it was last year or the year before, I spent a lot of time, I think it was in 2022, on the rise of the Nazi Party. Okay. Like how it got to power and how quickly they got to 1934. And what the people were then like at that point.
Right.
And this isn't really like an appropriate word in some ways to put on it because it's fucking dark, but it's like one of my favorite topics to look at because it reminds me of how much groupthink can overtake maybe decent individuals to support horrible things.
Right.
But you had a guy, you had said it way earlier in our conversation on something else. You had a guy in Hitler who not only channeled his own anger and traumatic experiences, but also channeled the current status of his country at the time where he was starting to try to get his hands on power, where, you know, they were post-World War I, Treaty of Versailles, depressed, no hope, a lot of lack of national pride or whatever. Right. And he said, I'm going to give you national pride. I'm going to give you jobs. I'm going to give you hope. I'm going to give you greatness.
Yep.
Right. Like we're going to make Germany the power it's supposed to be. So he was able to prey on all this stuff.
Yep.
And by appealing to those things, by speaking to people's fears, giving them a dream of a hope, however you want to say it, of what could be to replace those fears, he was then able to basically put people in the palm of his hand to then say, oh, by the way, because we believe this, Germany needs to be great.
Right.
By the way, we don't like Jews. And
right.
people are like, we don't.
Yep.
And the next thing you know, you're in Kristallnacht. Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.